The boundaries that I drew between myself and others were entirely self-fabricated. I was the one drawing lines in the sand the entire time, right? And my feelings of inferiority weren't a symptom of my experiences. They were the root cause of my experiences and of how I viewed those experiences. They were the problem. Like I mentioned before, I was the one writing the narrative that was threading all of these experiences together. So today's video is, again, one take, and I'm going to talk about something that was, I guess, more difficult to write, primarily because I didn't really want to write about it, but I figured that that was exactly the reason as to why I should push forward and continue to write about it. So I wrote like 6 pages about this in my, that's actually a lot, yeah, in my journal. And I don't know, it was just triggered by something that had happened today, which made me start thinking about the subject in general. So, all right, this is hard to get started writing on because it's something that I'm still trying to figure out. So the camera fell down, so picking back up where we left off. So I'm still trying to figure it out, and I don't quite know where I am in terms of it. Inferiority can be persuasive. Dude, I'm messing up so much. All right. Inferiority can be pervasive. It comes up in situations and interactions in such a way where you don't even know it's there, but it still holds you back consistently, right? And at least that's what it feels like for me. So I don't want to write about this, but that's exactly why I should push further, because I need to see why. So the honest truth is that I, for as long as I can remember, have viewed myself as below other people. It's a fact that has imbued itself into nearly every facet of my reality. And it all started when I was a kid, I think, and it is probably the result in part of how I was raised, alongside with things I experienced socially as a kid. So it became hardwired in my brain to immediately classify people, for example, around me into a form of social hierarchy. And I would do this without even realizing it generally. And this hierarchy would influence how I interacted with people, my thoughts, my feelings, my actions, and all sorts of things would be influenced by this hierarchy without me even realizing it. And of course, I would naturally just kind of put myself usually near the bottom of that hierarchy. And I never realized this. I've been doing this for like as long as I can really remember, and I never became consciously aware of it until like several months ago, like around half a year ago. And that's the first time that I actually became aware of it. I don't know what triggered that, but I realized this, and I was able to see how it influenced me then. And so that's actually when something crazy happened, because I was having a conversation with, one sec. You see, I'm talking about this, and so now I'm starting to feel like just generally a bit vulnerable, and I'm just going to continue even though there's someone walking by, because it doesn't really matter. That's when something crazy happened. So I was having a conversation with a friend of mine who I really respect, and I told him all this stuff, right? And then I realized that, or I told him all the stuff that I realized, and he was confused. Like, he was actually confused as I was describing all these thoughts and these feelings that I've been having, and as I was describing this part of my experience to him, because he explained to me, both through like reasoning and logic as well as like through examples, that everything I said was essentially entirely in my head and pretty much just utter bullshit, right? He told me that the way I saw things in my head was just incorrect, and pointed out all sorts of contradictions and counterexamples. And this is when I realized that I was actually my own worst enemy, because, all right, not gonna lie, this is a hard one. My camera, for some reason, has been not recording for significant chunks of this, and I naturally kind of go unscripted off of what I write in my journal, and it is overwhelmingly frustrating to have had all of that go unrecorded, because it's hard for me to speak about this, and I gotta just accept reality. This is what has happened. All of that is gone. This is this is the world. This is my experience. This is reality. I must just move on. Okay. It seems that where the camera last left off, I was talking about this friend of mine who was confused. So he explained to me through both logic and even with examples, that everything I said was in my head and essentially like utter bullshit, right? And so he told me that the way I saw things in my head was just incorrect and pointed out all sorts of contradictions and counterexamples. And this is when I realized that I was my own worst enemy, because throughout all of this, I'm admittedly still a bit frustrated that because I can't recall exactly what I said, but that's okay. I will go from scratch. I realized that I was my own worst enemy in all this because I have been operating in all these things that have existed in my own head are things that, like, the things that I accepted to be as fact or objective truth, right, are things that for other people might not have even factored into the equation, much less been true, right? Like, certain interactions in which I might have felt myself to be inferior, and that might have influenced my perception of events going forward. For other people, like, that's not even a consideration, right? And so in all these things, I'm kind of like overanalyzing myself and bringing myself a certain level of anxiety and just holding myself back in a sense for something that for other people just doesn't even exist, right? And so this was crazy to me because, and I don't know how much was recorded or not, but I mentioned before that, like, it's just the framework with which I viewed reality, right, was irrelevant. Not irrelevant, but it's just like, that's not how other people would see things, right? And it was just not respective of, or it was not accurate to how other people viewed me, for instance. And so I would place myself in these situations that almost didn't even exist, right? And I will move on from the fact that my camera stopped recording regardless. So the framework through which I viewed reality itself okay. Yes. This is the last time that I allow myself to get frustrated. From now on, we will just... Okay. The framework through which I viewed reality was itself far removed from reality, and this caused me to recontextualize so many of my experiences, because all of these experiences that I had, right? Like, now I was suddenly able to go back and realize that so many of these interactions didn't even exist. So many of these situations didn't even exist, right? Like, so many of the very framework through which I was viewing reality was removed from reality, right? So I would, it was almost like I would put myself in situations that were not accurate reflections. And I'm repeating myself, this is hard to talk about, and I'm trying to find ways to put words to my feelings, but I just suddenly started recontextualizing so many things where I with this recognition, conscious recognition, that I might have just been wrong about everything. Right now, I could go back and revisit all my memories, all these interactions, and see them maybe for what they really were, which is something that I couldn't do before, right? And I could revisit them and change the meaning that they had in my life, I guess, and suddenly become aware of how so many of my experiences were just adding up to a narrative that was written by myself, right? I was the one writing the narrative of these experiences, and I wrote them in a way that was made to hold me back, to make me feel inferior. And that was just wild, because I had never thought of something like that before. And so that's why this conversation was with this friend of mine was just so helpful for me to be able to realize that. And so I was able to see, like, all of the things that people did with what I imagined was hostile intent were likely done innocently, right? Sorry, just making sure I'm recording because I don't want that to happen again. So all the things that were likely done, they were likely done innocently, right? The people who I latched onto because I was worried that they would abandon me if I looked away for a second, in all likelihood were actually very appreciative of me and valued my friendship. The people I ghosted because I just felt like I would be bothering them by messaging them were probably sad and even hurt that I wasn't keeping in touch. The boundaries that I drew between myself and others were entirely self-fabricated. I was the one drawing lines in the sand the entire time, right? And my feelings of inferiority weren't a symptom of my experiences. They were the root cause of my experiences and of how I viewed those experiences. They were the problem. Like I mentioned before, I was the one writing the narrative that was threading all of these experiences together. That wasn't there. That narrative didn't exist within those experiences. My brain, myself, I have with this framework that I was operating under, with this foundation from which I viewed reality, I was threading these together in just the right way to convince myself that I was inferior, because that was my own self-image. And so, you see, your self-image is a powerful thing, because your brain, which is one of the most complex and advanced things that can exist in our universe, is a master at rationalizing everything you experience into whatever framework that you provide it. Whatever it is in the world that you look for is exactly what you will find. And in my case, it was inferiority. So the thing is, no matter what you do, you can't escape your own self-image. You have to confront it and to change it. In my case, my own feelings of inferiority caused me to start learning about self-improvement back when I was around like 12 or 13, right? And for so many years, I worked hard to improve myself. And I've made a ton of progress, right, since then. I mean, things were obviously kind of slow back when I was like 12 or 13, but I've learned, right, and I've grown since then. And I like whatever. The thing is that no matter what I do or how much progress I make, I always wind up feeling like I'm back at square one, like I haven't changed one bit from being the insecure boy that I used to be, right? And you can't escape your own self-image. I would work so hard to improve myself because I wanted to fix myself. I wanted to finally be a person with value, with some kind of worth, because I didn't inherently believe that I had worth. Or I didn't believe that I inherently had worth, right, as a person. And the issue is that both of these statements imply that I'm then currently a broken person with no worth, right? And that's exactly the problem. You see, because the thing is, if the foundation behind your actions is the idea that you are inferior, then by taking those very actions, you will only solidify that idea, right? Even if those actions are self-improvement. You can't escape your self-image. You have to confront it. So in my case, trying so hard to fix myself, trying so hard to improve myself, to grow so that I could be a person of value, the foundation, the argument there, to be able, like, the thing that you have to accept in order for those statements to make any sense is that I must be a broken person, or a person with no value or worth. And so by taking those actions, all I do is solidify to myself, yes, I am broken and in need of fixing, right? I am a person with no value, and I need to do these things in order to add value to myself, right? That's the foundation. So even though I'm taking actions for self-improvement, all I'm doing is holding myself back. You can't escape your own self-image. You have to confront it. It has to change, because only then will you stop holding yourself back, right? Because in all this, I made progress, right? I've made progress, but it doesn't matter what progress I make, because I might be able to make all this surface level progress, but deep inside, I still feel like I'm at square one. I feel like I'm running in place. So how does one do that? Well, I don't know, right? In my case, I think that becoming aware of it is a huge step forward, because now I'm able to catch myself whenever something happens. From there, I think it's just a process of working to rewrite that self-image by really being mindful and examining my thoughts, feelings, and experiences, right? I've definitely made progress, but sometimes I still catch myself falling into old habits, like I did today, and that's what brought this whole thing on. And I remember that there's still a lot of progress to be made. It's a long journey, but it's worth it, because You are your self-image, and depending on your situation, that can either be a terrible thing or a great thing, right? It takes a lot of work. I have been into self-improvement for a long time, and it's been a journey of up and downs, right? But the thing is, I never realized that so much of it was like that. My feelings of inferiority were so foundational to just everything in my reality until like not even a year ago, like half a year ago, right? And since then, I've tried making progress, and I've tried changing my perspective, changing the reasons I do things, the intentions with which I do things, right? Because I think that that intention is what it's all about. But because you can take the same self-improvement actions, but if you're trying to do them because you want to fix yourself, because you feel like you're broken, or you want to provide some amount of value to yourself because you currently feel worthless, that's very different than taking those actions because you believe yourself to be a okay, like good, just person, right? Like you believe yourself to be a person, right, with inherent value and inherent worth, and that you want to grow and that you want to improve. Those two things, those are different intentions, and those two actions will have different effects because the same action, depending on that intention, every action operates within the context of the world that you kind of experience in your head, right? And so by taking the action doesn't matter, the intention does, right? And this goes into something else that I've been thinking about in terms of how you can make things consistent and just trying to really work on your self-image in order to become the kind of person who can have things or do certain things. But that's besides the point. You need to focus on that self-image, because if you take all these great, amazing actions all in the name of insecurity, you will only be digging yourself deeper into a hole. And it's a lot to work on, right? And I don't have all the answers for this. I'm still working on it. I mean, today I realized, like, I noticed myself just kind of like, I didn't take any outward action, but in my head I was just kind of like, I was thinking a lot of like negative thoughts in a sense, and being reactively hostile in my head to things that I thought had hostile intent in a sense. But then I caught myself and realized, oh, like, that's not true, right? Like I'm having these feelings as a result of my own feelings of inferiority, right? But it's like outside of that, everything is just going on as normal, right? Like nothing has changed. Everything is normal. I just was feeling more negative in that sense today, and that has influenced my perception of the actions of others around me. And I caught myself on that, right? And I realized, oh, like I'm making some progress, but it still comes back every now and then. And then that's why I think it's so important to journal and to be mindful and to be aware and to just try and cultivate that mindfulness. Because if I wasn't doing all this journaling that I'm doing now, for example, I would have just let it go. I wouldn't have realized that some of these negative experiences that I had today were just the result of my own perceptions, right? They were not an accurate reflection of reality. They were a result of my own insecurities, my own feelings of inferiority that I have to deal with, right? That I need to confront, because if you don't confront that self-image, all you will do is hold yourself back. And there is not a single action you can take that will help you escape that, because every action you take with the foundation of your self-image will only serve to solidify that self-image. That self-image has to be confronted. And I know I've said that a lot, but I just think it's so important. And I'm still trying to figure out how to do it. I don't know how to do it, but I think that mindfulness and journaling and really being aware of yourself so that you can catch yourself when you fall into those habits and when you have those thoughts, and so that you can really examine them and rationalize yourself through those feelings. I think that's the best thing I've got right now, and I'm hoping that works. Let me make sure I'm recording real quick, because I would be so upset if I'm not. Okay, it still is perfect. Yeah, so this is kind of hard for me to talk about because I'm still figuring it out, and it's frustrating, and I don't like it, right? Like it sucks, but by being able to write about this and to talk about this, I think that's progress. And so, I hope this has helped you. Hopefully, if you have something like that, something within your own self-image that you realize is the thing that is betraying you, right? That you are sabotaging yourself. I hope you can take this as motivation to start reflecting on that and to hopefully make changes so that you can better that, right? So that's all I've got for now, but I really hope that this has helped you. And yeah, I've kind of fallen into a bit of a, not fallen, but I've been enjoying this system of kind of journaling because I journal all the time, right? And so it's a lot easier to just read from the things I journal and talk about them, and I think it's a lot more genuine and authentic, and these are the things that I'm going through, and I'm probably not that special, right? If I'm going through them, I think someone else likely is. A lot of people probably are. And so if my process of going through these things and trying to understand and improve on all of these things and on myself is helpful, then I'm glad. Hopefully, yeah. So hopefully that helps you, and I'll come back with more in the future.